Hi, I'm going to show you how to make these pumpkins out of handkerchiefs. This is just a little one we're using for sample because it's a good size. Um, the first thing you want to do is decide how big of a pumpkin you want to start with. So a handkerchief is pretty big, and you don't want to use a whole one. You want to use something that is at least twice as long as it is wide. For the biggest pumpkin I would recommend that you make, you'll want to make it half a handkerchief this wise, so just cut up right up the middle, and you could make two out of this handkerchief. It's up to you. I would recommend starting with a small one. We've given you a small piece of handkerchief to start with just to get the hang of it before you dive into making a really big one. But you can make a whole bunch out of one handkerchief. This one is about a sixth of a handkerchief, I think. So it's probably about this by that. You don't need a lot of handkerchief to make a little pumpkin. So your first step is, after you've chosen the size you want, to thread your small needle with some thread that matches your pumpkin. So here I've already threaded my needle with white, and you want to tie the ends of your thread together at the end, because otherwise it'll pull right through your project, and that would be pointless. So you do that, get your needle threaded, tie the ends together. Take your piece of handkerchief that you have cut out. This is the same size as I used to make this little guy. So there's that. You want to take the side that has the better printing on it. So this would be the outside of the handkerchief. You can see where it says 100% cotton. And you want to take that and you want to fold it together like that. So you've got one side that's folded and one side that has two little bits like that. Then you want to take your needle and thread and you want to sew up that side that you just put together. You want to use neat little stitches because this is going to hold your pumpkin together. So you're going to use the neatest little stitches you can, and you're going to sew right up the side of your pumpkin. And what we're doing is we're making a tube so that our pumpkin will be round, because otherwise it would just be flat. So I'm going to do it super quick, just so you get an idea, but take your time. And the first one will always be the hardest. Remember that. If you do go on to make a couple more, and we've given you supplies for that, they'll get easier and easier as you go. All right, so I've sewn up the side of my pumpkin, and then I'm just going to tie it off real quick. You can use whatever kind of knot you want for this. Just make it something that the thread will not pull through. All right. And that. And then clip your thread. So now what I've got is a handkerchief tube, like that. Okay? Now, decide which part of your handkerchief you want to be the top of the pumpkin and which you want to be the bottom of it. There's not really any difference to me for that, so I'm going to choose this part as the bottom. So still my fold is here, the side I just sewed is here, this is the bottom. Now I'm going to decide, and it's still open. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a new knot in my thread, because I almost forgot that, and that's important, because otherwise I would just pull my thread right out. All right, so I've knotted my thread. Pick up my handkerchief. This was the side I decided I'm going to sew. I'm going to sew from the side where the fold is along the bottom, and here your stitches could be maximum 1/4 of an inch long. So do that, a straight line right along the bottom, and if you can see, I'm about 1/4 inch in from the bottom of my fabric, and you want to do that just because you don't want to be sewing right on the edge of your fabric. It might rip out. So I'm going to run my stitches all between where the fold was and where that side I just sewed was. And when I get to the end, before I tie it off, I'm going to pull it tight like that. Okay, and that's cinching up the bottom of my thing. And now I'm going to tie a knot in my thread. And what this does is it's going to make a nice bottom for my pumpkin. My pumpkin will be nice and round. Okay, so now I've got this weird little sack. Now you're going to do, this is the inside of your pumpkin actually, so you're going to put your hands inside, flip it out like that. You can push it with your fingers. And now see your bottom is nice and neat. Your side is nice and neat because your stitches are on the inside. You've got like a little pumpkin sack. So your next step is to stuff it. Now you can stuff it as much or as little as you want. Bear in mind that when we do our actual little pumpkin sections, we're going to squish it down a little bit. So you don't want it to be too full. All right. And we didn't know exactly how much stuffing to give you because it's a really hard thing to measure, so we've given you enough for hopefully a couple at least. And if not, you can always use more stuffing. You can use fabric scraps you have around the house. If you wanted to use beans or rice, you could even. It would give it a little more weight. These weigh practically nothing. Okay, so I have stuffed my pumpkin. And I've got a little open-ended pumpkin sack there. We're going to use our thread and needle again. You need to tie another knot in there again. Always important. Tie the knot. And now what you're going to do is you're going to sew around the top, and we're going to cinch it up just like we did the bottom. So you're going to want to put your needle in and sew around the top of your pumpkin. And they can be 1/4-inch stitches like you did on the bottom. They don't have to be super tiny because we are just going to use it to cinch it up. So take a couple minutes to do that. And it'll take longer depending on the size of your pumpkin. If you did a really big pumpkin, you don't know. All right. Almost done. All right, if you start to run out of thread like I just did, what you want to do is you want to start pulling it tight so you have a little extra thread to work with. All right, so what I did, I pulled it tight and I got all my thread back. And what I did here to make it a little extra secure is then I take my needle and sew kind of through the top where we just cinched it up and do that like 2 or 3 times, and that'll keep it nice and secure. And it's going to be tough because it's going to want to pull apart as you're holding it, but just hold it. Pull it through, and then tie your knot. If you can see, so I haven't pulled my last stitch through all the way. I'm going to leave it like a little loop, and if you put your needle through it a couple times and then pull it tight, it makes a nice little knot for you. That's a little trick right there. All right, so now I've got basically a handkerchief apple, which is cool. If you wanted a handkerchief apple, you can stop right there. But I want a handkerchief pumpkin. So your next step, you take your really big needle, and I put orange thread on mine so that you'll be able to see the contrast, because I'm not sure how much of a contrast you can see with the thread that we put on this one. So you've got your really big needle. We gave you like the biggest needle we could possibly find because we wanted, if you were doing a big pumpkin, we wanted you to be able to get it through. So you take your little pumpkin and right down through the top and try to come out as centered in the bottom as you can. Pull that right through there till your knot catches. You can see my knot has caught on the end. And now I'm going to, so I've come out the bottom, I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to go back through the top. It doesn't have to be the exact same hole, but just like right next to it's fine. And then I'm going to take it out the bottom again and give it a little tug. All right. And what you're going to do here is pull it down a little bit, and that starts to give me that definition that I want on my pumpkin. And so you're going to do that again. Take your needle, put it down through the top, come out the bottom, and now because we want our sections obviously to be separate, you want your thread that's going around your pumpkin to be in a little bit of a different spot. So depending on the size of your pumpkin, it could be a couple inches, it could be 2 inches. That's going to be a design choice for you to make. All right, and I'm squishing. I'm kind of holding this with my hand and squishing it around. So now I'm going to do it again. And just remember, it doesn't have to be the same hole, but you just need to be coming out as close as you can to where your thread is in the top and bottom. And that's just going to keep it tidy. Okay, so now I got 3 sections. I think I'm probably going to do 5 on this pumpkin. let's see if I can do 2 more. And if you run out of the colored embroidery floss, if you didn't make a long enough piece, that's not a problem at all. Just tie it off, rethread your needle with another piece, and start again. Don't forget to tie a knot in the end. But nobody's ever going to be able to tell that it's 2 different pieces. It's not structural. It does not matter at all. All right, so I think I'm pretty happy with 5. You can see this is the bottom of my pumpkin. That's the top, although it doesn't really matter. They can kind of go either way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie it off. Yeah, I'm going to have to cut it and then tie it off because my needle's too long to do that little trick I just showed you before where you make the loop and sew through it. All right. So I'm going to cut that. I'm going to tie it off so that my embroidery floss doesn't go back through and my pumpkin loses all its nice little pumpkin definition. All right, and then you're basically done. We've left it up to you how you want to do a stem. You can go out in your yard and get a stick or a twig and break it to the right size. You could use a wine cork. You could do whatever you want, but we didn't know how many you were going to make or what sizes you were going to make, so we didn't include any stems. I hope you had fun, and I hope you get to make a bunch, and I hope you enjoy. Thanks so much. Bye.